It's been a couple of uh, days since I've done a review. I didn't play a lot this last week online. I played live more. So going to do a review of about 15 hands that I played. Sessions have been not bad, mostly wins via getting on the right side of a flip and getting it in with aces versus kings kind of thing. But we'll take it. And I think in terms of like strategy development, I think we're kind of getting there a little bit. We're trying to apply lessons learned from CPS in game without getting too bogged down in analysis paralysis kind of vibe. Um, working always to uh, play a semi-intuitive flow kind of game, but when stuck in a spot, knowing when to slow down and actually think things out a little bit. And generally, I think that's been going okay. Um, when we're there, we also want to um, know what to draw on, like what tools, what tactics, what kind of theory can we draw on when we're in a spot that's confusing. Um, and that obviously is what we do when we go through all these hands, hand by hand. But in game, it can get a lot trickier if it's not somewhat um, grooved well enough that it becomes available. I guess is the best way to put it. So anyway, enough preamble for now. Let's just look at some hands. We open, we re-raise, 3-bet 9-8 off on the button. We're a little tiny bit shallow. I have my my recharge at 80 big blinds, but so maybe I probably should just set it to whenever it gets under 100. It just becomes this kind of like little strictly thing. Um, so maybe a tiny bit shallow to be able to opening this hand, but whatever. We get called, end up with middle pair on a backdoor, flush and straight. Not a great hand for our range, for our 3-betting range. So I think if it's checked to us, we're probably going to check back. If we do, I think I tag this as a what kind of continuations do we have in this spot. I know my single raise pot continuations quite well, but I'm still a little bit rusty, or not rusty. That assumes that I knew it at one point. Still a little bit um, beginnery, I guess, on my 3-bet continuations because they are going to be different. Stacks are somewhat shallower, and urgency is less. Bet sizing is going to be a little smaller, especially on turns and rivers because we're getting the SPR1 faster because of the 3-bet. But in any case, elected to check here. We do pick up a flush draw. I think at this point now, if we are betting, or if we get checked to, I think we definitely have a delayed c-bet opportunity here. The question would be, how polar are we? I think we are probably polarizing more so. The with our bigger hands, so our sets for sure have a lot of denial needs, and also have a much higher urgency since we didn't bet the flop. This is kind of a tricky hand. Like if we do polar and get rebet, like raised, we're kind of not loving it because we have such a great redraw and a pair. I don't know whether this is a hand that we want to put all the money in with though. But I also don't see myself making a small kind of thin value bet here either because we don't really have thin value. So I think we're definitely polarizing when we bet here, but I don't know whether this particular hand wants to be polar. So we don't have to worry about it. We can just call a bet and brick a river for our draw. We still have a middle pair, so I think we have a lot of bluff catching to do here. We block misdraws of the second flush, draw. We block no draws of the first flush miss draw. So it's like 50-50 either way. Are we good with calling an overbet? Are we good with calling a half bet? For sure. Are we good with calling a small bet? Absolutely. Once, if it's a shove, say, or if it's like 60, so basically our 200% pot, how comfortable are we there? We block a straight and we have middle value. We lose to tens and over pairs, and they easily could have those. So those are the considerations there. I think the question becomes how good is our bluff catcher, and that will be dictated by the size. And I'll look at a sim after, but we don't end up having to get that. So now it becomes, do we go for a thin value bet? And I'm going to say probably not. I think we just show down. We do. And we win. Possibly could have gotten a call. All right, I think that all makes sense. Let's just look and see what we have in terms of 9-8. Excuse me. That would be this one. Looks like lots of mistakes, so that's good. So first off, it's never raising. It's just calling on the button, which, again, I'm not really playing much of a calling strategy on the button. So in the end, this sim does not really help us much, but we can look at something similar. I don't know whether we can really represent anything here properly. So we raise. We're not raising, we just call. I guess let's try this. Sorry. I don't know how to do this in a way that's not just going to take forever. I guess do something like this. And 9, 4. Right. So first off, our continuation is quite high, so we do have a range advantage here on the check with this portion of range. But they do have the nut advantage, so our bets are going to be quite small. Now it could just be that this small bet is built into the solve. I think I chose automatic. I don't think it's worth me going through this whole process because this isn't something I'm super comfortable doing and haven't learned a ton of how to do. We can see our equity actually is almost 50-50. So we chose to check, and then the card that came was a 2. They bet 4. We call with 9-8. I guess our bet before was, we were betting it before. And then 7 on the river. And then they check. And we will also check behind. So that's all fine. So I guess the question's somewhat answered. We do have bets. We have more bets than we thought. This isn't such a dangerous board for our range. We got lots of sets and 2 pairs and top pairs, and we even have sets of 4s, a tiny little bit. And then this call was also fine. I think it's full bets with the 9-8 with the redraws and the diamonds. There's no diamonds, but with the redraw heart, and but only by 0.02 EV, so it's very, very close. I think in the end it's probably fine the way it was played. What were the other questions I was asking? Do we have a bet on the river? No. Do we have no raises, I don't think, on the turn. Oh, I know what it was. It was turn, bet, call. There are raises, but certainly not with that combo. It's with our sets and trash hands like king, queen off. Yeah. So the gut shots. So the question was if we face a big bet here, like say an all in, do we call? And we do to a certain extent. It's an indifferent call, but it's sometimes calling. So that would be a break even call. And then the calls that are actually good would be the higher pair, tens. So the top pairs. Top pair. Not that queen 10 though. Or not that top pair. Interesting. Why? Why is the queen 10 indifferent versus the king 10? I guess because it beats the queen 10 that's betting. Let's see. Yeah, because queen 10's bet. Some of them all in. Yep. Just the club. Just the club. Shoves. And then ace 10 will call. So those are winning calls, winning bluff catchers. This 9-8 is a break-even bluff catcher. And things like sixes and below, these are going to be losing. Let's say losing. Those are break even. A lot of break evens. These are all losing. These ace highs makes sense. King 8. Okay, so we could call a shove on that river, but otherwise I think this is a good hand. Ace Jack will re-raise. They call. We have two overs with no real development. I'm gonna bet this pretty raggedly dry board. Probably could bet bigger. Should bet bigger. Would want to bet bigger with our set of tens. Why though? They are kind of a fishy player, so they're possibly calling station and will call off a bigger bet. What though does call? There's very few draws. Oh, this is another reason. Their stack is so small, so there's absolutely no reason to call a bigger or to make a bigger bet. We were so close to getting it in that it doesn't matter. Now they're committed. So the question here becomes, do we want to just shove it and see if our ace high actually can win against a bad player? I would say no. And then here now we do get to see it, but there's no point in risking any more money than we do actually pull it. I want to see whether that is a reasonable play. I think I feel pretty good about all that. Mostly because the stack is so shallow. Is that one? Yeah. No. We should just get it all in. Even against that stack size, hey? Interesting, interesting, interesting. I'm not sure what benefit comes from only 100 and what is this right? It's 26. Yeah, no, it's less than that. Is that the right hand? Yeah. Weird. Not sure what the solver is seeing that I'm not seeing, but stacks are are I think it's at 100%, isn't it? 22, it's less than 100. Pot's 26, and their stack is 22. So I'm not sure why this is not seeing that quite properly. 19 big blinds. 6 solved. Anyway. The solver does want to shove. The solver also wants to bet on the turn, which submits them. Interesting. Let's make a note. I'm not totally sure why. So solver actually wants a river bet, but I'm not sure why. I guess because there's no further risk. We get their stack when they call with worse ace. So, like, does this ever happen, though? I don't even imagine they have a solve in their library for this. Because the stack size is so fucked. So if we shove, say, it's just not right. Yeah. What do they call with that we beat? Nothing. They're just calling with a whole ton of pairs. So I think in this case, the solve is useless. I think the solve is useless because at least the library is. At least the library is. Because they start with 35 big blinds. Have to move over to tournament asim stacks. All right, so I think we'll just leave that as it is. I'm gonna just say it's fine because I don't think anything calls less than a pair. So there's just seems to be no value to shove with it. If roles were reversed and we had like ace 4 or ace 5, I could see that possibly because then we could get a better ace off the hand. But even there, we could just be folding out king high hands. I mean, it all is out the window because the player is so bad. So I think probably just caution is fine here. Ace 10, we just call. Could certainly be raising instead of just calling. Ace 10 is off as a kind of a kind of musty hand. We'll let them bet and call. We have a nice top pair, no point in folding out bluffs. We let them bet again, and we'll call again with the top pair, and now we hit the nuts, basically. None of the draws came in. I've been looking at spots like this on the river, and there are way more donkey kind of bets here than we're, like, in theory being led to believe. So I think that would be in further study as time goes on, and I finish the CPS. I would be looking at the river as the condensed range when draws come in to start putting money in because when out of position, because clearly and as a bluff, right? So with our value of bluff. So polarizing in position, out of position, polarizing out of position on the river as the previously condensed range when the nuts flop. So when a draw comes, when something like this, the ace just strengthens significantly. Here it's a little debatable because they could have an ace as well. They could easily have a better ace than us. We didn't re-raise, we didn't 3-bet pre-flop, right? So they could have ace, king, ace, queen, ace, jack. So there's no super reason to polar here. And also nuts are 5-2, which, I mean, that's probably more in our range that it is theirs. But nonetheless, in spots like this, where a draw comes, and we are the condensed calling range that has all of those draws, for sure the betters should also have those draws. The polarizing range should have those draws at the bottom of their polar and the bottom pole. But I think I'm seeing in the Sims a lot more leads in this spot. So The question would be to look into the sim and see like how often we can just lead out here. Like, and keeping in mind, this is not like, oh, your hand is so faced up because you obviously have an ace, or oh, your hand is so face up and the flush comes in because obviously you have a flush, you've been drawing and then the draw came. That's not, the answer is not to lead. The answer is not, I mean, for sure, obviously our checking range has to be protected. So we're not going to always put all our value into a leading range, but some portion of that can be put in because the action on the other side in position is 9 times out of 10 with what was value but now is demoted value, they're going to check back, right? So we are going to miss a bet if we don't try for those leads. And the counter argument to the transparency there is to just make sure that we have a proper number of bluffs to support those leads. So in this particular case, we could be calling with a queen high, we could be calling with king, queen, something like that. We could be calling with 4-3, like a worst two pair. We could be calling with kings, and then turn those into a bluff. Now, I think in this particular case, it wouldn't make a lot of sense because in that case, they're even more likely to have had an ace. So us like suddenly turning our hand into a bluff when the second ace comes on the river is probably not the wisest move. But assuming, say, a flush came in and we were drawing to the flush, we could be doing that with a spade, say, easily a spade X on the flop and turn, and then on the river we could use ace. Well, we're now strong, obviously, but on a river spade, say, we could use that as a bluffing hand. So we could possibly turn the ace pair into a bluff, maybe, or king. Like maybe king spade would be the better one to go. King X, king spade, and then the spade comes in the river. Anyway, I think the point there is clear. They check now, right? And they're 10-7, which I don't even know why. Like, what purpose was that? The flop bet is fine, but the turn polar bet, I'm not sure what with that particular combo. I'm not sure how their advantage there is so strong. If anything, the straight just came in, and they should be absolutely dialing it down. The big blind straight came in. 10-7. Anyway, make note, right? Let's just see. That one was, spells. So I'm figuring out how to do that part of this thing. Ace 10. And that was this. So how often do we donk on the river? 10% of the time. So it's something, right? Right here. Yep. So some of those aces, not the ace 10, but some of the smaller aces certainly have a small 10% lead. Button's still very polar, so we would always bet small into a polar range, obviously. And if we did bet that 10%, let's see what kind of hands will call that. So things down to king 5. So pairs of 3s, pairs of 2. So these are pure king high bluff catchers, king high bluff catcher, king high bluff catcher. 5s blocking a straight, 2 blocking a straight, 5-4 blocking a straight. So those things are, a 4 is a pair, I believe. Yeah. These very small little pairs, right? Good hands. These things, ace 8, ace 7, a couple of 8 mid-size aces. Those are actually good value beaters. It's these things, weak hands. Ace 6. Oh, wow, it's not even that. More so. Trash hands here. All right, those will become the bluffs. The ones that bluff raises. 8-7. What is it about those that want to be raised? Don't block queens for folds on queens, basically. Yeah, 8, 8, 8, 8, 8. Three. Not even interacting as a straight or anything. It's just sort of like, I guess, is far from both ends of calling cards. This 9-8, 8-7, 8-6, 9-7, 10-8, 9-8, 10-8. These cards are being used to raise because they unblock things like queen, X, and tens and jacks. Right. And 3, 3, 4, yeah. Ace, yeah. So there's no bigger straight. 3, 4, 5, yeah. We don't have a 2 on the board. That would be my thought as to why those particular hands are raising. Great. This, I think, is fine. King 10 off open, get defended, flop nothing. King highs possibly showdown value. If we had a spade in either one of these cards, maybe I'd put a bet in there, but with neither, no draws and basically nothing, this is a pretty garbage hand. The question then becomes, though, is our range advantage that much stronger? And probably, like, because our range is stronger, we probably have a bet here. Get a king, we bet it, get called, and then the question here on the river is why we're not betting. No draw came in, really, other than a pair of threes, or a 3, so trip threes. And worse kings likely aren't there. King Queen and King Ace King would have re-raised pre. Maybe King Jack is there. Worse kings are there. King 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Well, 3 is no good. King 9. So I think we missed a bet here. What size would it be? It's probably a polar bet, B75. Yeah, I mean, we're probably tier 2 value here, tier 3 value. That would be a mistake, I think. Let's see. So King 10. And that's this one. Oh, river is a pure check. Even the turn doesn't really have any bets on it, at least that size. So the turn does not want a polar size bet. It wants a small bet. Why is that? Because this range is so much more polarized. Let's have a look. So the turn, let's have a peek here. We are the cutoff. You know, our range is much, much stronger and is slightly more polar here right at the very top, but it's polar like all there and then all across. So we actually probably have a lot of big bets or mixes. So, you know, it's not as many as you think. 30% of range is betting, and more than half of that bet is going to be these bigger size bets, and then mixing in some smaller bets. And King 10 is not one of them. It is not a betting hand. I guess because it's the worst of our kings. Well, we have all those kings there, and those ones are betting. Well, King 3 is a 2 pair. King 2, King 4. Interestingly, the EV of the King 2 pair is not significantly more than the King 4. Ace 2, 3. Oh, these are both. That's two pair. That's two pair. King 4, King 5, King 6. Actually, it's got nothing to do with that. It's just the pot is so small. That's the reason that's different. Or not that it's different, but why it's not broader. It's still like 20% more. Um, yeah, so interestingly enough, we do not have that bet there. And then here on the river, it's very polar. Big, medium to big size, no over bets. So it's, just when I say it's very polar, it's actually not that. It's sort of mid-level polar, medium to big. And again, that particular combo doesn't bet here. The other kings do. Clearly the house kings do, and a king 8, which is the other two pair, I think. Yeah. And the worst hands are these queens, which probably get folds from. What do they get folds from? Worst pockets, probably. So if we were to bet this for 75, folds come in. Yeah. 7s, 6s, 5s, 4s, 9s, 10s, jacks, all of that stuff gives us the value of those queens bluffing. All right. So what note do we make here? Turn. I think this is like okay. This isn't an accuracy. It was just maybe a little excited to use this value as a bet. Also, bet size is a little big. Is that what we decided? No. Not because their polar is just it's just the wrong size for this combo. We are using that bet size to be 75. Yeah. Let's leave that off. Use to protect checks. And okay, good not to bet river. I'm not sure I actually looked at the proper turn node here. Turn bet. Yeah, so it's a mix. Because we're good across board, we have a mix of everything. We have more range equity, so we have bets across our range. And we also can size them bigger because we have the nut advantage there as well. So if we were to have checked that hand and then brought in the 3, and they check to us, at that point, king 10 off can bet for sure. That's where we can go crazy because we're just so strong on their check. And then king 10 can absolutely put bets in at that point. But that size is the size I used on the turn is the size that we're using on the river. So a check. So 2 checks and a river check. Okay. He's 10. Just call defend. It's such a nice hand. Let's just see. Probably want to usually 3-bet, especially a high ace, suited ace. Hit the monster nuts, and they just end up checking. So 8 is great for our range as well. 7-8 for us, big time. King 8, ace 8, ace 7, king 7. The only things we don't have are ace king, aces, and kings. So they're the polar. We are. This is a great bet for us. I end up polarizing, which is not probably the right thing to have done. Probably this would be a small bet size here and across range. But we end up getting called and the river blanks. So now we have top pair and I think we just go into check call mode. So the mistake here was on the turn, I believe, and we would have easily gotten another bet in if we had bet for that particular hand. But let's just look and see. Oh man, I keep doing that backwards. Ace 10. This guy. So we do want to bet on the river. We have many bet sizes, and actually the bigger sizes is the right way to go. So I think it turns out that we are not the polar range after all. Why would that be? Or not, they are not the polar range? I guess because if they had, they would be betting polar, not checking. Turn, right? We check, they check. So the fact that they check and they don't put in a big bet depolarizes them significantly. And the fact that they check the turn, well, they didn't check the turn. We bet the turn, right? We let out. And by the fact that they checked the flop, that's what allows us to have this strategy, which is much more polar strategy, right? The big blind now is the polar range. See that here, all of this much stronger up here, but then all this crap down here. So in game, I did the right action, and I actually bet properly with that. And then they call us, and then the river, we're going to be polar again, very polar, and that's where we missed. We can use multiple bet sizes. We've got some small bets, medium and large, and super large. So at this case, we have top pair, and the top pair has a size that wants kind of a, yeah, like a small to medium size bet. So review, and give it an okay. Actually, you know what? This is probably an inaccuracy. Good size in game. We are the polar range here on turn because they didn't bet flop, which they would / should have with all their ace most of best hands, right? So if we actually look at that flop here, this would be very polar. Yes, very polar, big bets. And in fact, all their range is big bets because they're so strong. So they, by checking, they just diminish the value of their range significantly. They should be betting pretty well everything. And this particular hand, King Jack, is absolutely a bet. King Jack Diamond, Hills, yeah. Oh, it's a mix, so it's not terrible. It's not terrible. They get checks and they get bets. So not a terrible move there. But generally, their whole range has bets, and by checking a good portion of the best value, right? All of that, most of that, those are all disappearing. They are betting purely. And then on river, we have a strong range that has all sizes. So this particular part of range can afford a B33 to B60 or so. That and should get it in versus exactly the portion they had. So I was concerned of a straight. I was concerned of two pair. They king queen, king queen. I have some king queen there, but they have more king jack. See more king jacks here in their checking range. Think some king queen, slightly more king jacks, slightly more. It's not a ton of difference, but there's enough. More king tens, more king nines. Okay, ace nine defend. Not doing a lot of re-raising. I guess with these really nice cards, I don't see a ton of reason to re-raise. But helps to hit that. So now we'll put a bet in, and they call, and then we hit our ace on the river, and I'm going to go into my usual check mode. I think I just keep missing these rivers, right? Like, I keep missing value on these rivers, and this is the place where we really need to get money into pots to win when we have top pair. Like, we rivered top pair. There's no reason to slow down there. I would imagine we bet polar on turn. They called, highly condensed their range. We now have to have bets here. We have to. I can't imagine that we wouldn't. I don't know exactly what world I don't bet there. So the world is where we don't actually bet the turn, much less the river. So that's an interesting angle. I guess because we have a really nice draw, we're out of position. What would be our big bets on that? Is there any? And why would that combo not be part of them? Turn that one. So for sure, those draws are betting, but those draws are not. Little small bets for the biggest ones. A pair. Nope, not a pair. Not totally sure why that one spade draw does bet bigger. EV-wise, it's indifferent. We do have a polar advantage, which is why we have a polar strategy, but we also have a range advantage, which is why we have some smaller bets as well. We have bets across. For whatever reason, those particular combos don't bet. Nor do those. Whereas everything else pretty well has a bet attached to it, except for that. Those one, like almost out of everything, they're the only ones that don't have bets. Tiny bit with ace nine, but EV wise, there's no like a pretty. Oh, I see small. Yeah, so a small bet for ace nine, small bet for ace 10, small bet for ace jack. No bet for ace 8. Big bets for ace 7. There's got to be some sort of blocker idea there. Interesting. Very interesting. So assuming, say we didn't, we bet, and they, well, you know what, it's not even worth going down that road. So, inaccuracy, turn. This combo is one of 2 or 3 that has no bets at all. Otherwise, our range has both none and range. So there's a whole gamut of bets. I don't know if gamut spelled properly. For some reason, this is the one combo that protects checks. One drawing combo, nut draw combo that protects checking range. So, I'm gonna just like give this an okay. We didn't get the combo exactly right, but it's not, I don't think, the end of the world. Because ace 7 does bet, and ace jack does bet a little bit, and ace 10 bets a little bit. We picked maybe the wrong size. Say ace 10 has a small bet, hand spade, as does ace jack spade. So if we bet, we keep it smaller. But again, the whole range has tons of sizes, so there has to be some simplification here. Probably simplify to a small block with a bunch of these draws, and then a large with others and value, and lots of other combos. I mean, it's just so many. There's so many different bets here, right? Was that one? No, that was this one. This one. This one. Where are we here? This one. No, this one. This one. What are we talking about? Turn. Right, turn out of position. Here. 60% checks. So it's not like we're just the full range is betting. It's still a lot of checking. A lot of checking. A5 defend could easily raise. This is one to raise. Pair of eights. Now we'll raise. And we get a fold. So I just wondered if that was even remotely close to a reasonable play. I feel like it is. We got to raise hand combos like that. Like that's just our board every day of the week, right? 5. For sure. We're good. Mostly calls, lots of raises. Good size too. R50. And fine call. Sometimes raise. Any bit of donk. Lots of raises. So let's see what our range looks like here. So we have a tiny bit of, no, not really. They just have a good range advantage overall. They bet small. And then we have a kind of no advantage. Yeah, they're just strong overall. So if we have any raises, they're just these small little R50s. And those are kind of across range. You can mix calls and raises with almost everything. that we're continuing. Queens open. It's called. Probably have more bets here than I'm allowing myself. Put in a small bet on a, I think, non-advantageous of us, but we have some amount of urgency that we want to try and get the bigger cards out. And then once they've condensed themselves down quite a bit, and also keep in mind they're so small, right? So I don't think we have a lot of big bets necessary. We'll put another bet and hope to get called from a jack. If we don't get, just see about that flop. That was why I included that here. Queens. Yeah, so we bet a lot more. I think I'm kind of getting a little off of c-betting these kinds of boards a little too much. So we need to bring that back. And then we can certainly pull the turn a lot more because we have not seen any sort of aggression from this guy, especially if it's check. We definitely need to get bigger bets going. So the question would be, if we bet the flop and they call, do we still polar that turn? Check. What do we, where the heck? So we bet here and they call, and then the 6 clubs. And they check. Yeah, we're still polar. I would have thought they'd be the more polar. Oh no, because they called. Yeah, checked, called, check. This is just condensing their range. Every action, every one of those actions is just pure condension. So for sure, we polar. So speed and accuracy. Too cautious on flop. Should c-bet most of range. Not wet enough to worry. And handle raises. And then turn, we can polar. Yeah, because their polar portion is likely leading turn after checks. And if we bet flop, if we bet flop, oh my God, and they called, then checked turn, we can still polar. And queens are in that portion. I am, well, let's just do this one hand and then we'll give her up. So we get raised and re-raised, and I think we defend king queen off. I'd be curious if that's actually the case. We got a draw, and so we'll go call to it. And the 7 comes, and we're going to put a big polar bet on the river, saying we hit our 7, and they call with queens. So I want to actually see, this is small blind versus big blind. So before we do that, let's just have a little bit of a think about it ourselves. So first question is, do we call off king queen off out of position versus a 3-bet? Say with that kind of stat we do. With that kind of stat we do. Granted, it's only 6 hands. Say against a more reasonable player, I think it was close to indifferent, but I think we are defending big broadways like that. We end up with a flush draw and king high flush draw. And I think, what was the size we've given? Yeah, a small bet. So 1/3 bet. I think it's definitely a call there. I don't know how many leads we have there, and then the check on the turn really weakens their range. So us going for the big bet on the river, I think, is totally valid. So if we got here, I think that big bet on the river is a good play. So I'm going to say that generally I think this was a good hand. Let's just see whether the machine agrees or not. It's that one. So yes to the raise. Re-raise, actually, if anything. There's certainly no folds. And we can certainly even a certain amount of EV and shoving, but not as much as just re-raising or calling. We check, and we're going to call 100% of the time, so good there. We check, and there is some leads with this particular combo. We'll have a look at the sim in a second. And then absolutely a bet on the river is valid and actually looks like a small blocker or an all-in are the proper sizes. So this is a little bit of inaccuracy of our size, but we are never not betting that river with that particular combo. So let's just have a look at why across the strategy. So here we are, and we'll pure check. They are betting good portion of small bets. We are defending at sort of an MDF, basically splitting our equities. They're slightly ahead of us, so we might be kind of unfavorable, maybe a little bit. We have raises, and none of them include, oh, we have raises. No, we don't, with the king queens. Turn, we will continue to, for the most part, stack. Oh, it's 21% donks, and that does include some of our king queens with those hearts. A small little 20% lead on a 7. Oh, there's a pair turning. Turn pairing card benefits us, allows us to put some bets in, pulled out a bunch of garbage. We didn't bet in this particular case, but they checked. So now the river is a whole shitload of betting. Everything. Everything bets. For the most part, it's small and then a tiny bit of B60s. But yeah, like our range is so strong after that turn check, so strong. The only caveat would be that tiny little portion where they have a night advantage that sort of necessitates us to dial it down. I think because our equity is so strong, right? 74% range equity versus 25%, we now just want to translate that into a range bet with smaller sizes. So even though that were the case, you can see here, this thing is using the all-in with the king queen off. So this was good. This was a good hand. And river mostly B20 to B50 sizing here, but these uber polar combos, of which this one is, wants to use all in. B75 is not really here. So yeah, I guess the value then on that river is not really wanting to use a B75. It wants to just go for it and try and get the max value. So this particular combo gets used for that at some portion of the time. Okay, anyway, no blenders, good's good, couple inaccuracies, which are great. Good to find those, and otherwise, I think fairly well played. 2 good sessions, up I'd say 5 buy-ins, I guess, between those 2 sessions, which is good. Again, I think always needing to look at rivers, missing value at river spots, still continuing to learn, continuing to teach myself, and continuing to think out things like advantages, range advantage, polar advantage, and recognizing where they are. This is going to be the ongoing study for the year, is really understanding our advantage and where our combo is tiered and what job it can do considering the advantage that our range holds. Great, thanks.